I'm David, and I'm going to tell you about the day my ex-wife, Michelle, walked back into my life and tried to rip my kids away from me. Emma was 10, and Jake was 8 when Michelle showed up at my door after over a year of silence. See, Michelle had abandoned them 3 years earlier, chose her personal trainer over her own children, and suddenly decided she wanted custody. Yeah, I went through rage. I went through disbelief at the sheer audacity. But then something colder settled in, something focused. Because when someone threatens your children, you don't just defend yourself. You annihilate every lie they tell, every manipulation they attempt, every legal trick they pull. I exposed every broken promise Michelle made to Emma and Jake, every missed birthday, every way she failed them. And when Michelle tried one last time to destroy my happiness, I buried her so completely that she had to watch from another state while I built the family she threw away. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours, then you'll understand exactly what I did next. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, 3 years after Michelle left, and I was sitting at the kitchen table helping Jake with his math homework. He was struggling with fractions, and I was doing that thing where you try to explain division in 5 different ways, hoping one of them clicks. The house smelled like the pasta sauce I had simmering on the stove for dinner. Everything was normal, peaceful even. Then the doorbell rang. Emma got up from the living room where she'd been reading and went to answer it. I heard the door open, then this sharp gasp. "Mom?" My stomach dropped. That one word, that shocked, confused "Mom," made everything inside me go cold. I stood up from the table and walked to the foyer. And there she was, Michelle, standing on my doorstep like she had every right to be there. She looked different, tanned, like she'd just come back from vacation. She was wearing expensive yoga pants and this designer jacket I definitely never bought her. Her hair was longer, highlighted. She looked like she'd stepped out of a spa, not like someone who'd abandoned her children over a year ago. "Hey, babies," Michelle said, reaching out toward Emma and Jake with this huge smile. Jake immediately moved behind me, grabbing the back of my shirt. Emma just stood there, frozen, staring at Michelle like she was seeing a ghost. "Michelle," I said, keeping my voice flat and controlled. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my children, David. Is that a crime? You can't just show up unannounced after a year of silence." Michelle's smile tightened. "Actually, I can. I'm their mother, and I'm here to tell you that things are going to change." I felt that coldness in my chest spread. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm filing for primary custody. My lawyer's already drawn up the papers. You'll be served tomorrow." The kids were right there in the hallway, and she was dropping this bomb like she was ordering a coffee. "Are you out of your mind?" I said, forcing myself to keep my voice level, even though rage was building inside me like a pressure cooker. "You abandoned them. You chose your boyfriend over your children." "I was going through a difficult time," Michelle said, and her voice took on this rehearsed quality, like she'd practiced this speech. "I had postpartum depression that was never properly diagnosed. I'm better now, and I'm ready to be their mother again." "Postpartum?" I laughed, but it came out hard and sharp. "Jake was 5 when you left. That's not how postpartum works, Michelle." "My therapist says—" "I don't care what your therapist says," I cut her off, stepping forward. "You don't get to waltz back in here and rewrite history. You weren't depressed. You were selfish. You wanted your freedom, and you took it. Now you want back in? After the kids have stabilized? After I've put in 3 years of work?" Michelle straightened up, trying to look confident. "I'm their mother, David. The courts favor mothers, especially when the father works 60 hours a week and barely has time." "Barely has time?" My voice got harder, colder. "I'm at every single school event. I cook every meal. I help with every piece of homework. I'm the one who held Emma when she cried for you. I'm the one who explained to Jake why his mommy didn't come to his birthday. So don't you dare come into my house and tell me I don't have time for my children." "A judge will see things differently," Michelle said, but I could hear the slight waver in her voice. "Brandon and I are engaged now. We have a stable home. I can provide a 2-parent household." "Brandon?" I repeated slowly. "The guy you cheated with. That's your selling point? Stability?" "We're getting married in 3 months. We bought a house in Maplewood, near the good schools. I'm not working right now, so I can be home full time. Can you say the same, David? Or are the kids in after-school care until 6 every night? That one landed, and she knew it. Yeah, Emma and Jake were in the after-school program until I got off work. The program was good, great even, but she'd found the weak spot and jabbed at it. I stepped even closer to Michelle. Close enough that she had to look up at me, close enough that I saw her flinch slightly. Good. Let me make this crystal clear, I said, my voice low and controlled. You will not take my children. You gave up that right when you walked out. And if you want to go to war over this, I will bury you. I have 3 years of documentation. Every missed call, every skipped holiday, every broken promise. I have emails from your own lawyer saying you didn't want custody. I have testimony from teachers, neighbors, and family. You think a judge is going to look at you and see a devoted mother? They're going to see exactly what you are, an opportunist who wants back in now that the hard part is over. You're being dramatic, Michelle said, but her voice definitely wavered this time. No, Michelle, I'm being a father. And you're about to learn the difference between wanting something and deserving it. Now get out of my house before I call the police and report you for trespassing. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Then she looked past me at Emma and Jake. Emma, Jake, Mommy loves you. I'll see you soon, okay? Neither of them responded. Emma just stared. Jake pressed harder against my back. Michelle turned and walked down the driveway to her car. I watched until she drove away. Then I locked the door. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from pure rage. That night, after I put Emma and Jake to bed, after reassuring them that nobody was taking them anywhere, I sat at the kitchen table and started making a list. Everything I needed to do, every piece of evidence I needed to gather, every person I needed to call. My sister Rachel showed up around 9. I'd texted her right after Michelle left. She can't actually win this, can she? Rachel asked, sitting across from me. I looked up from my list. I don't know, I admitted, but I'm not taking any chances. Rachel stayed until almost midnight that first night, helping me think through everything. We made lists, talked through strategies, and by the time she left, I had a plan. Well, the beginning of one anyway. First thing the next morning, and I mean first thing, like 8 a.m., I called Marcus Bradford. Marcus was the family attorney who'd handled my divorce from Michelle 3 years ago. He was expensive, but he was the best in the county. If anyone could help me protect Emma and Jake, it was Marcus. David, Marcus said when his secretary put me through. I heard Michelle's been making moves. What's going on? I told him everything. The surprise visit, the custody threat, the papers I was about to be served. Marcus listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. She's going to argue changed circumstances and rehabilitation, Marcus finally said. It's a common play. Woman leaves, realizes she made a mistake, gets therapy, claims she's better now. Courts sometimes buy it. Can she win? I asked. My throat felt tight. Not if we're prepared. But David, we need to be thorough. I'll need every piece of evidence you have, every text, every email, every missed phone call, everything. I have it, I said. All of it. Good. And David? Marcus paused. This is going to get ugly. Michelle's going to say things about you that aren't true. She's going to try to make you look bad. You need to be ready for that. I don't care, I said, and I meant it. Whatever it takes. The papers arrived that afternoon. A process server showed up at my office right before lunch. I signed for the envelope, closed my office door, and read through everything. My hands started shaking by page 2. Michelle was claiming I was an absent father who prioritized work over parenting. She said Emma and Jake needed a stable 2-parent home with a full-time caregiver. But the worst part, the part that made my blood boil, was her claim that I'd been emotionally abusive during our marriage. That was a complete lie, a total fabrication, and she knew it. But I also knew why she was doing it. She needed to paint me as the bad guy to justify why she'd left. She needed the court to believe I was the problem, not her. I called Marcus immediately and read him the allegations. He was quiet again, then asked me to email him a copy of the entire petition. This is actually good for us, Marcus said after reviewing it. She's overplaying her hand. The emotional abuse claim, we can disprove that easily with testimony from friends and family. And the absent father claim doesn't match reality. We'll show the court who you really are. We met in person 2 days later at Marcus's office. I brought the binder, 3 inches thick, organized chronologically. Every missed phone call from Michelle, every text where she'd promised to visit Emma and Jake and then canceled, every email where she'd said she needed space or time to figure things out. 3 years of documentation. 3 years of her choosing herself over her children. Marcus flipped through the binder slowly, nodding. This is excellent, David. Really excellent. But we need more than just documentation of her absence. We need character witnesses. People who can speak to your parenting and her lack of involvement. Like who? Teachers, coaches, doctors, anyone who's seen you with the kids over the past 3 years. Anyone who can testify that you're the primary parent and have been since she left. I started making calls that same afternoon. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was first on my list. She'd been Emma's second-grade teacher and had seen firsthand how Emma struggled after Michelle left. "Mr. Hartman," Mrs. Patterson said when I explained why I was calling, "I'd be happy to testify. Emma's told me many times how much she appreciates everything you do for her, and I've never seen her mother at a single school event." That felt like a small victory. Next was Jake's soccer coach, Mr. Liu. Jake had been playing soccer for 2 years, and I'd been to every single game and practice. Mr. Liu agreed immediately to provide testimony. "You're at everything," Mr. Liu said. "I've coached for 15 years, and I can count on one hand the number of dads as involved as you. I'll absolutely testify to that." Then I called Dr. Reeves, Emma and Jake's pediatrician. Dr. Reeves had been seeing the kids since they were babies. I explained the custody situation, and there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "David," Dr. Reeves said carefully, "I can provide documentation showing you've attended every single appointment for the past 3 years. Every checkup, every sick visit, every vaccination. Michelle hasn't attended a single one. That's 37 appointments total. Can you put that in writing? I'll have a letter ready by end of week." By Friday, I had commitments from 5 different people to testify or provide written statements. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Liu, Dr. Reeves, my sister Rachel, and my neighbor Tom, who'd watched me transform from a devastated husband into a dedicated single father. Marcus called that Friday evening. The courts ordered home studies for both households. A social worker named Janet Mills will be coming to evaluate your home environment and Michelle's. She'll interview you, interview the kids, look at their rooms, their school situation, everything. When? Next week. David, this is important. Your house doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to show that the kids are cared for. Clean clothes, healthy food, homework space, structure. Can you do that? Marcus, that's every day of my life already. Then you'll be fine. Janet Mills arrived the following Tuesday afternoon. She was in her 50s, professional, but warm. She spent 3 hours at my house. First, she interviewed me, asked about my work schedule, how I managed childcare, what our daily routine looked like, how I handled discipline and homework and emotional support. Then she interviewed Emma and Jake separately. I wasn't allowed in the room, which made me nervous, but I trusted my kids to tell the truth. After the interviews, Janet walked through the house. She checked Emma's room, saw her bookshelf full of books, her artwork on the walls, her school projects organized on her desk. She checked Jake's room, saw his soccer trophies, his neatly made bed, his homework folder. She looked at the family calendar on the kitchen wall showing every soccer practice, every parent-teacher conference, every dentist appointment. She looked in the refrigerator and pantry. She even looked at the chore chart I'd made where Emma and Jake had responsibilities appropriate for their ages. Finally, Janet sat down with me at the kitchen table. "Mr. Hartman," she said, "I can see your children are well cared for here." It wasn't an official ruling, but it felt like one. The week after Janet Mills finished her home study at my house, I kept building our case. Marcus had been clear. We needed overwhelming evidence, not just adequate evidence. We needed the judge to see beyond any doubt that Emma and Jake belonged with me. Mrs. Patterson sent me her written statement first. 3 pages detailing how Emma had cried multiple times during 2nd grade, asking why her mommy didn't love her anymore. How Emma's grades had initially dropped after Michelle left, but recovered once Emma adjusted to our new routine. How I'd attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every class party. Mrs. Patterson noted that in 3 years, Michelle had never once attended a school event or responded to teacher communications. Mr. Liu's statement came next, 2 pages about my attendance at every soccer practice and game for 2 seasons. How I'd volunteered to help with team snacks, how I'd organized carpools for away games, how Jake had told Mr. Liu that his dad was his hero, Mr. Liu specifically noted that Jake's mother had never attended a single game. Dr. Reeves sent the letter she'd promised, a detailed breakdown of every medical appointment for Emma and Jake over 3 years. 37 appointments total. My attendance, 37 out of 37. Michelle's attendance, 0 out of 37. The numbers were damning. Rachel gave a statement, too, describing how she'd moved in for 6 months after Michelle left to help me adjust, how she'd watched me learn to braid Emma's hair, pack nutritious lunches, handle bedtime routines solo, how she'd seen me break down crying exactly once, the night after Michelle left, and then pull myself together because Emma and Jake needed me functional, not destroyed. My neighbor Tom provided a statement about watching the transformation of our household, how he'd seen me leaving for work early and coming home late, but always making time for the kids, how he'd watched Emma and Jake playing in the yard, laughing, adjusted, and happy, how he'd never seen Michelle visit once in the past year. 2 weeks after Janet's visit to my house, Marcus called with an update. She completed Michelle's home study yesterday, Marcus said. I don't have the official report yet, but my contact says Michelle and Brandon's house is nice, clean. They have bedrooms set up for the kids. But here's the thing. When Janet interviewed Michelle, Michelle couldn't answer basic questions about Emma and Jake. Didn't know Emma's teacher's name. Didn't know what position Jake plays in soccer. Couldn't name their best friends or their favorite subjects in school. She doesn't know those things because she hasn't been around, I said. Exactly, and Janet noticed. Then Michelle called me. It was a Thursday evening, around 7. Emma and Jake were doing homework, and I almost didn't answer when I saw her name on my phone. We need to talk, Michelle said when I picked up. Through lawyers, I replied. David, please, can we meet for coffee? I think we can work this out without going to trial. For the kids' sake. Against every instinct, I agreed. Maybe I wanted to hear what she had to say. Maybe I wanted to look her in the eye one more time before we went to war in court. We met Saturday morning at a cafe near my office. Michelle was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. She looked tired, less polished than she'd been at my door. Her highlights needed touching up, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Listen, Michelle started before I even sat down. Maybe I came on too strong before. I miss them, David. I made mistakes, but I've changed. I'm in therapy. I'm doing the work. You missed 3 years of their lives, I said flatly. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices. I know, and I'm sorry. But taking this to trial is going to hurt everyone, especially Emma and Jake. What if we compromise? Joint custody, 50-50. They spend half their time with you, half with me and Brandon. I stared at her across the table. You think I'm going to give you 50% custody after everything you've done? I'm their mother. You were their mother, I interrupted. Now you're just the woman who left. And no, Michelle, there's no compromise here. You want time with the kids? You can have supervised visitation, once a month. We'll build from there if, and only if, you prove you're consistent. But I will never agree to joint custody. Never. Her face hardened. The sad, apologetic mask dropped away, and I saw the real Michelle underneath. Cold, calculating. Then, I'll see you in court, she said. Looking forward to it. I left the cafe feeling vindicated. She'd shown her hand. This wasn't about missing Emma and Jake. This was about ego, about winning, about not wanting to be the bad guy in the story of her own life. But the real blow came a week before the custody hearing. Jake came home from school acting strange, withdrawn. He picked at his dinner, barely spoke, went to his room early. I found him sitting on his bed, staring at the wall. Hey, buddy, I said, sitting down next to him. What's going on? Jake didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, Mom came to my school today. Everything inside me went cold. What? She was waiting outside when school got out. She said she wanted to talk to me. She brought me a toy, that robot I wanted. And she said, Jake's voice got smaller. She said you were trying to keep her away from me, that you were lying about her. She said she loves me and wants me to live with her, and that you were being mean by not letting her see me. My hands clenched into fists. I forced them to relax. What did you say? I asked, keeping my voice calm. I said I didn't want to live with her. I want to stay with you and Emma. But then she started crying and said I was breaking her heart. She said I was being cruel and that I didn't understand how much she loved me. She'd ambushed my 8-year-old son, She'd manipulated him emotionally. She'd violated the custody order by approaching him without permission or supervision. That was the line. She'd crossed it. "Jake," I said carefully, "you didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. Your mom shouldn't have come to your school like that. And you don't have to feel bad for wanting to stay here. This is your home. Do you understand?" Jake nodded, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. Michelle had planted that guilt deliberately. After Jake went to bed, I called Marcus. "She approached Jake at school today," I said, barely controlling my rage. "Without my permission, without supervision. She brought him a toy and tried to manipulate him into saying he wanted to live with her." There was a pause. Then Marcus spoke, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "That's a violation of the custody order. That's going to look very, very bad for her in court. I'll file a motion first thing tomorrow morning." "Good," I said, "because I want her buried." Marcus filed an emergency motion the next morning documenting Michelle's unauthorized contact with Jake. The motion detailed how Michelle had approached Jake outside his school, brought gifts to manipulate him emotionally, and attempted to undermine the existing custody arrangement by telling Jake that I was keeping Michelle away from him. "This is serious, David," Marcus told me over the phone. "She violated a court order. Judges don't take that lightly, especially when it involves manipulating a child. This could swing everything in our favor." The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. I barely slept the night before. I kept running through everything in my mind. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every possible question Michelle's lawyer might ask. Emma and Jake knew something big was happening, even though I'd tried to keep them shielded from the details. "Are we going to have to live with Mom?" Emma asked me Sunday night. "No, sweetheart," I said, pulling her close. "That's not going to happen." "Promise?" I wanted to promise. God, I wanted to promise. But I also knew better than to make guarantees about what a judge might decide. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you and Jake stay with me," I said instead. Everything. Monday morning arrived. I put on my best suit, the one I wore to important work presentations. Marcus met me outside the courthouse at 8:30. "Remember," Marcus said as we walked in, "stay calm, answer questions directly. Don't let Michelle or her lawyer get under your skin. We have the facts on our side." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Michelle was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Rebecca Tate. Brandon sat behind Michelle in the gallery, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my car payment. He had his hand on Michelle's shoulder in this performative show of support. Michelle looked perfect, hair done professionally, makeup subtle but polished, conservative dress. She'd dressed for the part of devoted mother trying to reunite with her children. Judge Barbara Simmons entered, and we all stood. She was in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back severely and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked like she'd seen every custody manipulation in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. Michelle's lawyer went first. Rebecca painted this picture of Michelle as a woman who'd suffered from undiagnosed postpartum depression, who'd needed time to heal, who'd done therapy and gotten better, and was now ready to be the mother Emma and Jake deserved. Rebecca talked about the stable two-parent home Michelle could provide. She emphasized that I worked long hours and relied on after-school care. She even suggested that I'd alienated the children from Michelle during the separation. Then it was our turn. Marcus methodically destroyed every argument Rebecca had made. He presented the 3-inch binder, organized with tabs and highlights, showing 3 years of Michelle's absence. Every missed phone call had a date and timestamp. Every canceled visit had documentation. Every broken promise to Emma and Jake was recorded. "Your Honor," Marcus said, "this isn't a case of a mother who temporarily struggled and is now ready to parent. This is a case of a mother who made a choice, multiple choices, to prioritize her own desires over her children's needs for 3 consecutive years." Then Marcus called witnesses. Mrs. Patterson took the stand first. She testified about Emma's emotional struggles after Michelle left, about the times Emma had cried in class, asking why her mommy didn't love her, about my consistent attendance at every school event while Michelle never appeared once. "In 3 years of teaching Emma," Mrs. Patterson said, "I have never had a single interaction with her mother. Not at conferences, not at school events, not even a returned email. But Mr. Hartman, he's been at everything, every single thing." Mr. Liu testified next about Jake's soccer, about my attendance at every practice and game, about how Jake had once pointed at me on the sideline and told his teammates, "That's my dad. He comes to everything. Dr. Reeves didn't testify in person, but had provided detailed records showing my perfect attendance at 37 medical appointments versus Michelle's 0 attendance. Then Marcus brought up the school incident. Ms. Hartman, Marcus said, standing and facing Michelle directly. Did you approach your son Jake outside his elementary school on October 15th of this year? Michelle glanced at her lawyer before answering. Yes, I wanted to see him. Did you have Mr. Hartman's permission to approach Jake? I'm his mother. I shouldn't need— Your Honor, Marcus interrupted, turning to Judge Simmons. Ms. Hartman had no permission and no supervision. The existing custody order clearly states that any contact with the minor children must be with Mr. Hartman's knowledge and consent. Ms. Hartman violated that order and, more concerning, used that unauthorized access to manipulate Jake emotionally. She told him that his father was keeping her away from him and made Jake feel guilty for wanting to remain in his primary home. Rebecca objected, tried to argue that Michelle had a right to see her children, but Judge Simmons held up her hand. I'll hear from Ms. Hartman directly, the judge said. Ms. Hartman, why did you approach your son without permission from the custodial parent? Michelle's composure started cracking. I just missed him. I wanted to see my son. David has turned them against me, and I thought if I could just talk to Jake— So you brought him a gift and told him his father was lying to him, Judge Simmons asked, looking at the motion Marcus had filed. I didn't— That's not— Michelle's voice rose. This is exactly what David does. He twists everything. He's manipulative and controlling, and he's poisoned my children against me. Brandon shifted uncomfortably behind her. Judge Simmons removed her glasses and looked directly at Michelle. The courtroom was completely silent. Ms. Hartman, I've reviewed all the evidence in this case very carefully. Your absence from your children's lives for nearly 3 years is deeply troubling. Your inability to answer basic questions about them during the home study is concerning. Your attempt to approach your child without authorization is unacceptable. And frankly, your claim of postpartum depression 7 years after your youngest child's birth is not credible to this court. Michelle started crying. Brandon put his arm around her shoulders. Judge Simmons continued, her voice firm. I am denying your petition for primary custody in its entirety. Mr. Hartman will retain sole legal and physical custody of both minor children. You will be granted supervised visitation rights, twice monthly for 2 hours per visit. These visits will be supervised by a court-appointed monitor at your expense. After 6 months of consistent attendance at these visits, we can revisit the arrangement. But Ms. Hartman, let me be clear. If you violate any court orders again, if you attempt to contact these children outside of supervised visits, I will terminate your visitation rights entirely. Do you understand? Michelle was crying too hard to answer. Her lawyer answered for her. Yes, Your Honor. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just stood there feeling 3 years of tension drain out of my body all at once. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. You did it, he said quietly. Outside the courtroom, while Marcus gathered his files, Michelle confronted me one last time. Brandon stood awkwardly behind her, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. You've turned them against me, Michelle said, mascara running down her face. You poisoned them. They were my babies, and you took them from me. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness where all my feelings about her used to be. No, Michelle, I said quietly. You did that yourself. Every time you chose not to call, every birthday you missed, every promise you broke, I didn't turn Emma and Jake against you. I just picked up the pieces after you left them broken. I walked away and didn't look back. The weeks after the custody hearing felt like finally being able to breathe again. The constant tension that had been sitting in my chest for months just disappeared. Emma started smiling more. Her teacher sent me an email saying Emma seemed lighter, happier, more focused in class. Jake stopped having nightmares about being taken away. He slept through the night for the first time in weeks. We fell back into our routine, the one that worked, the one we'd built together over 3 years. Homework at the kitchen table after school, family dinners every night where we talked about our days, weekend adventures to the park or the movies or just riding bikes around the neighborhood. It was simple, normal, perfect. Michelle showed up for the first supervised visit 2 weeks after the hearing. The court-appointed monitor, a woman named Susan Chen, called me afterward to give me a brief report. The children were polite but distant, Susan said carefully. Emma answered questions but didn't initiate conversation. Jake mostly played with toys and didn't engage much. Ms. Hartman seemed frustrated by their reactions. How did it end? I asked. Ms. Hartman cried. She told the children she loved them. They said they loved her too, but Susan paused. It felt obligatory, rehearsed, not genuine. Michelle showed up for the second visit as well. Susan's report was similar, awkward, stilted, the kids going through the motions but clearly uncomfortable. The third visit, Michelle didn't show up at all. Susan called me that afternoon. Mr. Hartman, Ms. Hartman didn't arrive for today's scheduled visitation. I waited 30 minutes past the appointment time. She didn't call or provide any notice. I wasn't surprised. This was Michelle's pattern. Show up for a little while, then disappear when things got hard or didn't go her way. 6 months after the custody hearing, Marcus called with news. Michelle's lawyer contacted me, Marcus said. Michelle isn't going to pursue any further custody modifications. She's essentially giving up her fight for more time with Emma and Jake. Good, I said. And I meant it. Life kept moving forward. I got a promotion at work, operations director with better hours and more flexibility. It meant I could leave by 5 most days, could make it to more of Emma and Jake's activities without rushing. The pay increase didn't hurt either. Emma made the honor roll that semester. Straight A's. She brought home her report card beaming, and I put it on the refrigerator with about 15 magnets like it was a piece of fine art. Jake became captain of his soccer team, 8 years old and already showing leadership skills that made me proud. I never missed a game, not one. Then, about a year after the custody hearing, I met Lauren. It was at a school fundraiser for Emma's school. One of those evening events where parents bid on donated items to raise money for new computers or field trips or whatever the school needed that year. I usually avoided these things. Awkward small talk with other parents wasn't my strong suit. But Emma had specifically asked me to come because her class had made an art project that was being auctioned. I was standing by the refreshment table, drinking mediocre coffee, when a woman next to me laughed at something. Sorry, she said, noticing I'd turned to look. I was just reading the description for this romantic dinner for 2. It's at Applebee's. They called Applebee's romantic. I looked at the auction sheet and couldn't help smiling. Hey, half-price appetizers after 9 p.m. Very romantic. Nothing says I love you like endless mozzarella sticks, she said, and we both laughed. Her name was Lauren. She taught 4th grade at Emma's school. Not Emma's class, but the same grade level. We started talking and the conversation flowed easily. She'd been divorced for 3 years, no kids of her own, but she clearly loved working with children. She understood the chaos of co-parenting, even though, as she pointed out, it sounded like I was mostly solo parenting. Emma's lucky to have you, Lauren said when I mentioned juggling work and school activities and homework. Most of the dads I deal with show up for exactly one parent-teacher conference per year and consider themselves involved. We talked until the fundraiser ended. Then, almost nervously, I asked if she'd want to get coffee sometime. Actual coffee, not school fundraiser coffee. I'd like that, Lauren said, and she smiled in a way that made something in my chest feel warm for the first time in years. We started dating slowly. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend lunch dates while Emma and Jake were at their activities. I didn't introduce Lauren to the kids right away. I wanted to be sure first. I'd already put Emma and Jake through enough upheaval. I wasn't going to bring someone into their lives unless I knew it was real. But after 6 months of dating Lauren, I knew. She was kind in this genuine way that couldn't be faked, patient with my complicated schedule, understanding when I had to cancel plans because Jake was sick or Emma had a school emergency. She never pushed to meet the kids, never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with. When you're ready, Lauren always said. There's no rush. 8 months after we started dating, I introduced Lauren to Emma and Jake. I kept it casual, just lunch at a pizza place on a Saturday afternoon. Emma was shy at first, but Lauren asked her about her favorite books, and suddenly Emma was talking a mile a minute about the fantasy series she was reading. Jake was more reserved, but when Lauren asked him about soccer and actually knew what positions meant and what offsides was, he warmed up. After lunch, driving home, Emma said from the back seat, I like Miss Lauren, Dad. She's nice. Yeah, Jake agreed. She's cool. Can she come to my next soccer game? Lauren came to the next soccer game, and the one after that. She came to Emma's school play. She started coming over for dinner once a week, then twice a week. She didn't try to be their mother. She was just Lauren. someone who cared about them and showed up consistently. The kids loved her. More importantly, they trusted her. A year after meeting Lauren, 18 months of dating, 10 months of her being part of our family routine, I knew I wanted to marry her. I knew Emma and Jake would be happy about it. I knew this was right. One Saturday morning, with Emma and Jake sitting on the couch, I got down on one knee in our living room. "Lauren," I said, holding the ring I'd bought 2 weeks earlier, "you've made me remember what happiness feels like. You've been amazing with Emma and Jake. You've made our family complete in a way I didn't know was missing. Will you marry me?" Emma started crying before Lauren could even answer, happy tears streaming down her face. Lauren was crying too. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course, yes." Jake jumped off the couch and high-fived me so hard my hand stung. We started planning a small wedding for the following summer. Everything was falling into place. I'd rebuilt my life from the ground up. I'd protected my children. I'd found love again. Everything was perfect. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Michelle decided to destroy it all again. 3 weeks before the wedding, Lauren came over for dinner looking pale and shaken. Emma and Jake were upstairs doing homework, and I was in the kitchen finishing the pasta when Lauren walked in holding her phone like it was a live grenade. "David," she said quietly, "we need to talk." My stomach dropped. Those 4 words never meant anything good. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting down the wooden spoon. Lauren handed me her phone without saying anything. There was an email open on the screen. From Michelle. I started reading, and with every sentence, my blood pressure rose. "Dear Lauren, I feel I have a moral obligation to reach out to you before you make a terrible mistake. I was married to David for 8 years, and I know who he really is behind the facade he shows the world. David is controlling and emotionally abusive. During our marriage, he monitored everything I did, where I went, who I talked to, how I spent money. He isolated me from my friends and family. When I finally found the courage to leave, he turned my own children against me as punishment. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to suffer the way I did. David will seem perfect at first, attentive, caring. But once you're married, once you're trapped, he'll show his true colors. He'll control every aspect of your life. He'll make you feel like you're crazy for questioning him. My children are terrified of him but too scared to say anything. I've tried to help them, but David has convinced everyone that I'm the problem. Please, for your own safety, reconsider this marriage. You deserve better than what David Hartman will give you. A concerned friend, Michelle." I read it twice, then a third time. Every word was a lie. Every single allegation was pure fiction designed to destroy what Lauren and I had built together. "David," Lauren said, and her voice was shaking. "I don't believe this. I don't. But she sounds so convincing. And she's their mother. What if there's some truth?" "Stop," I said, probably more sharply than I intended. I forced myself to take a breath. "Lauren, look at me. Look at me." She met my eyes. There were tears building in them. "Every word of that email is a lie," I said, keeping my voice steady even though rage was building inside me like a volcano. "Michelle is doing this because she can't control me anymore, so she's trying to control you. She's trying to ruin this for us because she can't stand that I'm happy. But why would she lie about something this serious? About abuse? About the kids being afraid? Because she lost," I interrupted. "She lost custody. She lost her chance to rewrite history and play the victim. And now she's watching me build a life with you, and it's killing her. So she's doing what she does best, manipulating and lying." Lauren nodded, but I could see the doubt in her face. The seed Michelle had planted was already growing. "I believe you," Lauren said. "I do. It's just, this is a lot to process." That night, Lauren was quieter than usual. She helped Emma with her homework like always, played video games with Jake like always, but there was this distance that hadn't been there before. When she left, she kissed me goodbye, but it felt different, tentative, uncertain. The next morning, Lauren called me before work. "David, I've been thinking," she said, and my chest tightened. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding." "What?" "Not cancel," she added quickly. "Just wait a few months. I just need some time to process everything. That email really shook me, and I want to make sure—" "Make sure of what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Make sure I'm not the monster Michelle says I am? Lauren, you've known me for almost 2 years. You've been around me and the kids constantly. Have I ever shown any signs of being controlling or abusive? No, but no buts, I said. Either you trust what you've seen and experienced, or you trust an email from a woman who abandoned her children and lied to a judge. You can't have it both ways. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I need a few days, Lauren finally said. Please, David, just give me a few days to think. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my car in the work parking lot, staring at my phone, feeling that cold rage settle in again. Michelle wasn't going to win. Not this time. Not ever again. I called Marcus as soon as I got to my office. She's harassing my fiancé now, I told him, explaining the email. What can I do? If she contacts Lauren again, we can pursue a restraining order, Marcus said, but one email might not be enough for a judge to grant it. Then I need to make sure there's enough, I said. I sat at my desk and drafted an email to Michelle. I wrote it carefully, professionally, asking her to stop interfering in my life and to leave Lauren alone. I was polite, reasonable. I laid out exactly why her allegations were false. Then I sent it, knowing Michelle wouldn't be able to resist responding. I was right. Her response came less than 2 hours later. It was unhinged, angry. She claimed she had every right to warn people about me, that she was protecting Lauren from making a terrible mistake, that I was a manipulative narcissist who had destroyed her life and stolen her children. Perfect. I forwarded both emails, mine and her response, to Marcus. File for the restraining order, I told him. But I also did something else, something more important. I started documenting every lie Michelle had told in that email. The abuse allegations, the claims about controlling her during our marriage, the statement that Emma and Jake were afraid of me, all of it. Then I reached out to people who knew the truth, friends from our marriage, people who'd seen how Michelle and I interacted, people who knew I'd never been controlling or abusive. 3 mutual friends agreed to provide written statements refuting everything Michelle claimed. They described our marriage truthfully. 2 people who grew apart, with Michelle becoming increasingly distant and selfish, while I tried to hold the family together. I compiled everything into a folder: the emails, the witness statements, documentation of Michelle's lies during the custody hearing, her history of manipulation and deception. Then I brought it all to Lauren. It was a Friday evening. I asked her to come over after Emma and Jake went to bed. When she arrived, I handed her the folder. Read this, I said. All of it. Every page. I need you to see the truth, not Michelle's lies. Lauren sat on my couch and started reading. I made coffee and waited in the kitchen, giving her space. She was in there for over an hour. When she finally came into the kitchen, her eyes were red from crying. I'm so sorry I doubted you, Lauren said, her voice breaking. Even for a second. I should have known better. I should have trusted what I've seen with my own eyes for 2 years instead of an email from someone I've never even met. You didn't doubt me, I said, pulling her close. Michelle got in your head. That was her exact goal. But it's not going to work because we're not going to let it. Lauren nodded against my chest. What do we do now? Now? I said, feeling that cold determination settle in. Now, we make sure Michelle can never do this again. The next morning, Marcus called to say he'd filed the restraining order petition. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Bring everything you showed Lauren, Marcus said. We're going to bury her. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until I could end Michelle's interference permanently. But Michelle wasn't done yet. She was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, 10 days before the wedding. Marcus and I spent those days preparing like we were going to trial for murder. We need to show a pattern of harassment, Marcus explained during one of our prep sessions. The email to Lauren is the centerpiece, but we need context. We need the court to see that this isn't a one-time mistake. It's part of Michelle's ongoing campaign to control and manipulate you. I had plenty of context to provide. The custody battle, the unauthorized contact with Jake at school, the lies she'd told to Judge Simmons. Michelle had given me years of ammunition, but I wanted more. I wanted Michelle to hang herself completely. 2 days before the hearing, I sent Michelle another email. This one was shorter, more direct. Hey, Michelle, your email to Lauren was inappropriate and filled with false allegations. You need to stop contacting anyone in my life. If you continue this harassment, I will pursue every legal remedy available. Leave us alone. David, I sent it at 10 in the morning and had her response by noon. How dare you tell me what I can and can't do? I have every right to warn people about who you really are. You're a manipulative, controlling narcissist who stole my children and destroyed my life. Lauren deserves to know the truth before she makes the same mistake I did by marrying you. You can't silence me with your threats and your lawyers. I will tell anyone who'll listen what kind of person you are. You've ruined everything for me, and I hope you rot in hell. I read it 3 times, then forwarded it to Marcus with a single line. This enough? Marcus called me immediately. Oh, this is more than enough. She just threatened to continue harassing people in your life. Print this out. Bring it Wednesday. Judge Simmons is going to have a field day with this. But I wasn't done building my case. I reached out to 3 more people from Michelle's life, people she didn't think would talk to me. The first was her sister, Jennifer. Jennifer and I had always gotten along during the marriage, but she'd stayed neutral during the divorce for family reasons. I called her Tuesday evening. David, Jennifer said, sounding surprised. Is everything okay? Not really, I admitted. I told her about the email to Lauren, about Michelle's attempts to sabotage my engagement. I know you're her sister, and I'm not asking you to take sides. But Jennifer, you know me. You know I was never abusive or controlling. If you'd be willing to provide a statement saying that, I'll do it, Jennifer interrupted. David, I love my sister, but what she's doing is wrong. She's been spiraling for months. She's bitter and angry, and she's making up stories that just aren't true. I'll write the statement tonight and email it to your lawyer. The second person was Michelle's former therapist, the one she'd been seeing during our marriage. I couldn't get therapy records, but I could ask Dr. Patricia Moore if she'd be willing to testify that Michelle had never mentioned abuse during their sessions. Dr. Moore couldn't provide details due to confidentiality, but she did send a letter to Marcus stating, during my treatment of Michelle Hartman from 2019 to 2021, she never reported experiencing domestic abuse, emotional abuse, or controlling behavior from her spouse. Had such allegations been made, I would have been legally obligated to document them and provide appropriate resources. The third person was Brandon, Michelle's ex-fiancé. The relationship had fallen apart 3 months after the custody hearing, and I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Brandon had his own stories about Michelle's behavior. I found his number through a friend and called him Sunday afternoon. Brandon, this is David Hartman. I know this is awkward, but I know why you're calling, Brandon said. She sent an email to your fiancé, right? Claiming you're abusive? How did you know? Because she did the same thing to my ex-girlfriend when I started dating again. Sent her a long email about how I was controlling and manipulative. None of it was true. Michelle just can't stand seeing people move on and be happy without her. Would you be willing to put that in writing? Absolutely. I'll send a statement to your lawyer tomorrow. David, for what it's worth? I'm sorry I was part of breaking up your marriage. I didn't know the full story at the time. Michelle painted herself as this victim who needed saving. I believed her. I was an idiot. You were manipulated, I said, just like she's trying to manipulate Lauren now. Wednesday morning arrived. Lauren came with me to the courthouse for moral support. Marcus met us outside with his briefcase literally bulging with documentation. I've never been more prepared for a hearing in my life, Marcus said. We have everything. The emails, the witness statements, Jennifer's statement, Brandon's statement, Dr. Moore's letter, Michelle's entire history of lies and manipulation. Judge Simmons is going to see exactly who Michelle really is. The courtroom was the same one where the custody hearing had taken place. Judge Simmons was already on the bench when we entered. Michelle was there with a different lawyer this time. Apparently, Rebecca Tate had dropped her as a client. The new lawyer was younger, looked less experienced, and seemed nervous. Michelle looked worse than I'd ever seen her. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. She was wearing jeans and a wrinkled sweater. She looked like she'd given up on appearances entirely. Marcus presented our case methodically. He started with the email to Lauren, reading the entire thing aloud in court. Then he presented my polite response asking Michelle to stop, followed by her unhinged reply. Your Honor, Marcus said, this demonstrates a clear pattern of harassment. Ms. Hartman has made false allegations of abuse designed to interfere with Mr. Hartman's personal relationships. When asked to stop, she explicitly stated her intention to continue harassing anyone in Mr. Hartman's life. Then Marcus called witnesses. Jennifer testified about knowing Michelle and me during our marriage and never witnessing any controlling or abusive behavior from me. Brandon testified about Michelle's pattern of making false allegations against her ex-partners. Dr. Moore's letter was entered into evidence. Marcus also brought up the custody case, the lies Michelle had told, her violation of the custody order, her emotional manipulation of Jake. This isn't an isolated incident, Marcus argued. This is who Ms. Hartman is. When she doesn't get what she wants, she lies, she manipulates, she harasses. Mr. Hartman is asking this court for protection, not just for himself, but for his fiancée Lauren, and for his children Emma and Jake, who have already been victimized by their mother's behavior. Michelle's lawyer tried to argue that Michelle had a First Amendment right to share her experiences, that she genuinely believed she was helping Lauren avoid a bad situation. Then Judge Simmons asked Michelle a direct question. Ms. Hartman, did you have any evidence that Mr. Hartman was abusive during your marriage? Police reports, medical records, testimony from witnesses? Michelle opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "It was emotional abuse, psychological. There's no proof of that kind of thing. He was subtle about it." "So no evidence," Judge Simmons said flatly. "He's manipulating everyone," Michelle suddenly shouted, her composure cracking. "He turned my kids against me. He's turned my own sister against me. He's poisoning everyone against me, and you're all falling for it. He's a narcissist and a liar and—" "Ms. Hartman," Judge Simmons said sharply, "control yourself." But Michelle didn't control herself. She kept going, her voice getting louder, more frantic. She called me a manipulative narcissist. She accused Judge Simmons of being biased. She claimed everyone was conspiring against her. The bailiff took a step forward. Michelle's lawyer put a hand on her arm, trying to get her to sit down and be quiet. Judge Simmons removed her glasses and looked at Michelle with something like pity mixed with disgust. "Ms. Hartman, your behavior right now is demonstrating exactly why this restraining order is necessary. I'm granting Mr. Hartman's petition for a 2-year restraining order prohibiting you from any contact, direct or indirect, with David Hartman, Lauren Hayes, or the minor children Emma and Jake. Furthermore, I am terminating your visitation rights pending completion of a full psychological evaluation. You will not see your children until you complete that evaluation and any recommended treatment. Do you understand?" Michelle started screaming, actually screaming. The bailiff moved forward and took her arm. "This is insane. He's destroying my life. Someone has to stop him." The bailiff escorted Michelle out of the courtroom while she continued shouting. Her lawyer looked mortified. Brandon, who'd been sitting in the gallery, just shook his head. Judge Simmons looked at me. "Mr. Hartman, I apologize that you and your family have had to endure this. The restraining order is effective immediately. If Ms. Hartman violates it, contact the police and my office immediately." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said. Outside the courtroom, Lauren hugged me tight. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." "Yeah," I said. "It is." 3 months after the restraining order hearing, I learned through a mutual friend that Brandon had filed for divorce from Michelle. Apparently, the courtroom meltdown had been the final straw. Brandon had seen exactly what I dealt with for 8 years: the manipulation, the victim mentality, the complete inability to accept responsibility for anything. She blamed everyone but herself for everything that went wrong, the friend told me over coffee. Brandon said living with her was like walking on eggshells constantly. She'd explode over nothing, then act like he was the crazy one for reacting. I wasn't surprised. I was just glad Brandon had gotten out before they'd had kids together. Lauren and I went forward with the wedding planning without any further interference from Michelle. The restraining order held. Michelle made no attempts to contact us, Lauren, or the kids. She'd gone completely silent, which was honestly the best gift she could have given us. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday in July. We kept it small, just close friends and family. My sister Rachel was there. Lauren's parents flew in from Ohio, a few coworkers, some parents from Emma and Jake's school who'd become genuine friends over the years. Emma was the flower girl. She'd picked out her own dress, light purple with sparkles, because of course it had sparkles. She'd practiced walking slowly down the aisle for a week leading up to the wedding, taking it so seriously it made my heart ache. Jake was the ring bearer. He wore a suit that matched mine and kept checking his pocket every 5 minutes to make sure he still had the rings. At 8 years old, he was terrified of losing them. The ceremony was at a small, outdoor venue, a garden with a gazebo and flowers everywhere. It was perfect, simple but beautiful. When Lauren walked down the aisle, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace. Complete peace. This was right. This was what my life was supposed to look like. Emma cried during the vows, happy tears streaming down her face. Jake stayed stoic until the end, then high-fived me so enthusiastically when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," that everyone laughed. At the reception, Emma came up to me during dinner. "Dad, can I call her Mom Lauren?" I looked at Lauren, who had tears in her eyes. "If Lauren's okay with it, then yes," I said. "I'd love that," Lauren said, pulling Emma into a hug. Jake was more direct. He just started calling her Mom Lauren without asking permission. During the father-daughter dance, which became a family dance because Emma insisted Jake and Lauren join us, Jake said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "This is way better than before. I like our family now." Out of the mouths of babes. After the wedding, Lauren and I bought a bigger house in a better school district. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, room for everyone to have their own space. Emma got the bedroom with the window seat she'd wanted. Jake got the bedroom closest to the bathroom because, as he explained, "I drink a lot of water before bed." The transition was smoother than I'd expected. Lauren didn't try to come in and change everything. She adapted to our routines while slowly introducing some of her own. Movie nights became a thing. So did Sunday morning pancakes, which Lauren made from scratch using her grandmother's recipe. Emma and Jake adjusted beautifully. They never called Lauren Mom without the Lauren attached. They kept that distinction, and I respected it. They weren't erasing Michelle from their history. They were just acknowledging who was actually there, who actually showed up, who actually loved them consistently. Emma's grades continued to improve. She got accepted into the gifted program at her new school, which meant more challenging coursework, but also more opportunities. She thrived there. Jake's soccer team made it to regionals with Jake as captain. I coached the team with another dad, and Lauren came to every game. She learned all the kids' names, brought orange slices, cheered louder than anyone else in the stands. One evening, about 6 months after the wedding, I was tucking Jake into bed when he said something that made everything worth it. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy? I'm glad you married Mom Lauren." "Yeah? Why's that?" "Because she makes you smile. Like, really smile. Not the smile you did before when you were pretending everything was okay. A real smile." I hadn't realized Jake had noticed. Hadn't realized that an 8-year-old could see through my attempts to shield him from my pain after Michelle left. "She makes me really happy," I admitted. "Me too," Jake said. Then, after a pause, "Do you think Mom Michelle will ever come back?" "I don't know, buddy. Maybe someday. But right now, we're good. We're really good, aren't we?" "Yeah," Jake said, smiling. "We're really good." That conversation confirmed something I'd suspected for a while. We'd won. Not just in court. Not just by getting the restraining order. We'd won by building something real, something solid, something that Michelle had tried twice to destroy and failed both times. A few weeks later, Lauren officially filed to adopt Emma and Jake. Michelle didn't contest it. In fact, Michelle's lawyer sent a letter saying Michelle consented to the adoption. I didn't know if Michelle had given up completely or if she just didn't have the energy to fight anymore. Either way, the adoption was finalized 3 months later. Emma and Jake were legally Lauren's children now, not replacing Michelle biologically, but acknowledging who their real mother was in every way that mattered. At the adoption celebration, just us 4 and Rachel, Emma made a toast with her apple juice. "To Mom Lauren," Emma said, "for actually being here." Jake raised his juice box. "And for making really good pancakes." We all laughed. Lauren cried happy tears. I took a picture of the 4 of us together and made it my phone background. This was my family, the one I'd built from the ground up after Michelle burned everything down. The one that actually worked, the one that was filled with love and consistency and people who showed up. Michelle never completed the psychological evaluation Judge Simmons ordered. Without it, she couldn't pursue visitation with Emma or Jake. A few months after our adoption celebration, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Michelle had moved to Arizona. She was working retail at some mall store, dating someone new, starting over again in a different state. She sent birthday cards to Emma and Jake that year, generic cards from a drugstore with happy birthday printed on them and her signature inside. No personal message, no acknowledgement of what they were doing in their lives or how they'd grown. Emma read hers and said, "Thanks," then put it in a drawer. Jake texted Michelle a polite thank you and moved on with his day. They'd let go. They'd stopped waiting for Michelle to be something she wasn't capable of being. And honestly, that was the healthiest thing they could have done. Michelle was part of their past. Lauren was their present and future. And me? I got to be the dad I'd always wanted to be, with a partner who actually showed up, in a family that actually functioned. That was the real victory. Michelle never completed the psychological evaluation. Months passed, then a year, then 2 years. The court order stood. No evaluation meant no visitation rights. Michelle chose not to fight it, which told me everything I needed to know about how much she actually wanted to be in Emma and Jake's lives. I heard updates about Michelle occasionally through mutual acquaintances who were still connected to her on social media or through her sister Jennifer. Michelle had moved to Arizona shortly after the restraining order expired. She was working at a Target, living in a small apartment, dating someone new. Jennifer said Michelle posted constantly on Facebook about new beginnings and finding herself and leaving toxic people behind. Everyone could see through it. Michelle was 42 years old, working retail, cycling through relationships, and posting inspirational quotes about rising above negativity. She'd become exactly the kind of person who blames everyone else for their problems and never looks in the mirror. Meanwhile, our life was thriving in ways I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago. Emma turned 13 and started middle school. She was in the advanced math and science programs, talking about maybe becoming an engineer someday. She joined the robotics club and the debate team. She had a solid group of friends. She was confident in a way that made my chest tight with pride. Jake was 11 and had become one of the top players in his soccer league. Colleges were already starting to send recruiting letters, which seemed insane for an 11-year-old, but apparently that's how youth sports worked now. He was a natural leader, both on and off the field. Lauren's adoption had become official 3 years ago, and the kids had fully embraced her as their mother. They still called her Mom Lauren to distinguish her from Michelle, but the mom part was what mattered. When they talked about their mother, they meant Lauren. When they needed comfort or advice or help with homework, they went to Lauren. When they were proud of something and wanted to share it, they ran to Lauren first. Michelle had sent birthday cards sporadically over the years. Some years she remembered, some years she didn't. The cards were always generic, always impersonal. Emma kept hers in a box in her closet, not throwing them away, but not displaying them either. Jake usually glanced at his, said, "Okay," and moved on with his day. Last year, Michelle had tried to friend Emma on Facebook. Emma showed me the request, asked what she should do. "That's your choice, sweetheart," I told her. "You're old enough to decide if you want a relationship with her." Emma thought about it for a day, then declined the request. "I don't think I'm ready," she told me. "Maybe someday, but not now." I supported her decision completely. Through Jennifer, I learned that Michelle's life had continued its downward trajectory. The boyfriend in Arizona had lasted 8 months before he left her. She'd been fired from Target for attendance issues. She'd moved to Nevada, then back to Arizona. She'd started another relationship that ended badly. She'd posted online about how some people just refuse to take accountability and how narcissists destroy everything they touch. The irony was completely lost on her. Jennifer told me Michelle talked about Emma and Jake sometimes, claiming she'd been kept from them and denied her rights as a mother. Michelle had completely rewritten history in her mind. She'd convinced herself that she was the victim, that I'd stolen her children, that the court system had failed her. "She'll never accept responsibility," Jennifer told me last Christmas when she came to visit. "She'd become part of our extended family over the years. She can't. Because if she accepted that she's the reason her children don't want her in their lives, she'd have to face what she did. And Michelle can't do that." I didn't feel anger toward Michelle anymore. That emotion had burned out years ago. Now I felt something closer to pity. She'd had everything: a family who loved her, children who adored her, a life that could have been fulfilling, and she'd thrown it all away because she thought something better existed somewhere else. She'd burned every bridge, alienated her children, lost her sister's respect, destroyed relationships one after another. And now she was in her mid-40s, alone, working dead-end jobs, and still convinced everyone else was the problem. Meanwhile, I woke up every morning next to Lauren. We had coffee together while Emma and Jake argued over who got to use the bathroom first. I went to work knowing my family was solid and secure. I coached Jake's soccer team. I helped Emma prepare for debate tournaments. I had Sunday dinners with my sister Rachel and her family. I had a life that was full and meaningful and good. Lauren and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary last summer. We took a family vacation to the Grand Canyon, all 4 of us hiking, taking pictures, laughing at Jake's terrible jokes, listening to Emma explain geological formations she'd read about online. At one point, sitting around the campfire at night, Emma said something that stuck with me. "Dad, do you ever think about what our lives would be like if Mom Michelle had stayed?" It was the first time she'd asked that question directly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Why?" "I was just thinking. If she'd stayed, we wouldn't have Mom Lauren. And I can't imagine our family without her now." Jake nodded agreement. Lauren's eyes got watery. "Everything worked out the way it was supposed to," Emma continued. "Mom Michelle wasn't happy with us. She wanted something else. And that's okay, I guess. Because now we have someone who actually wants to be here." That's when I realized Emma and Jake had reached a place of genuine acceptance. They weren't angry at Michelle anymore. They weren't waiting for her to change. They'd simply moved on. And honestly, that was the healthiest possible outcome. I think about Michelle sometimes, not with anger or satisfaction. Those emotions are long gone. I think about her with a kind of detached pity. She could check in on Emma and Jake's lives if she wanted to. Jennifer would tell her about their accomplishments, their happiness, their growth. But Michelle doesn't ask, because asking would mean confronting what she gave up, and Michelle isn't capable of that. So Michelle stays in Arizona or Nevada or wherever she is now, working retail, posting inspirational quotes, dating men who eventually see through her victim act, and convincing herself that everyone else ruined her life. Meanwhile, I have everything Michelle could have had. I have Emma telling me about the college engineering programs she's researching even though she's only 13. I have Jake bringing home soccer trophies and asking if I'm proud of him. I have Lauren next to me in bed, planning our next family vacation, talking about maybe fostering or adopting another child in a few years. I have a life so full, so good, so undeniably better than what Michelle threw away that she has to watch from the outside, if she looks at all, and know she'll never have it again. That's not revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't destroy Michelle's life. Michelle destroyed her own life with every choice she made, every bridge she burned, every lie she told. I just built something better in the ashes she left behind. I built a family, a real one based on consistency, love, and people who actually show up. Michelle tried to destroy me twice, once when she left for Brandon, and again when she tried to take Emma and Jake and sabotage my relationship with Lauren. Both times, she failed completely. Now Michelle has to live with that failure every single day while I get to live with my success. That's justice. That's revenge. And honestly, it's the sweetest victory I could have asked for. Because I won by living well, by being a good father, by choosing the right partner, by building something real. Michelle lost by being exactly who she is. Someone who destroys everything good in her life and blames everyone else for it. I don't need to do anything to Michelle. She's doing it to herself. And me? I'm too busy being happy to care. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.